Welcome, everyone. We are here on National Voter Registration Day to have a very important call. I'm so excited with our lineup today. We are going to hear first we're going to hear from Richard Hill, who is Vote Our Voice. And we are also going to hear from Alice Moore and Denise Holt, who were Pettus Bridge activists and have an amazing story to tell you. We have Charles Thomas from You Vote, I Win. Hopefully IJ Alvarado from Black Voters Matter Fund will join. And at 9:30, we have Greg Palast, who's an investigative reporter and has been uncovering voter suppression across the country for several decades now. And I wanted to start with Richard Hill, who has an interesting tool called Vote Our Voice. So go ahead, Richard.
Hi, everyone. Um,
Hi.
Vote Our Voice is a platform that we developed that helps voting by giving people data on their politicians. So basically, what happens is that what we're striving to do is give people report cards on these politicians, and the report cards are customized to the individual user. So they register, they pick topics that they care about, and then we generate summaries of actual legislation that your politicians have voted on, and it's as if you're the politician when you're voting on these summaries of legislation. That generates an immediate report card, and you're able to see uh, three things in that report card: you versus the politician to know how well they represent you individually, you versus your voting district to see the differences between how you think and the people who live around you. And then lastly, the most important part, it's the voting district versus the politician, so that you can see how well the collective group is being represented by that politician. Um, we've uh, been around now for just going on about 6 years. We've expanded into um, Canada and the UK, and bringing on Pakistan and South Korea next. And we've generated over 1 million users of the platform and about 1.4 million social media followers. So it's doing well, but there's a lot to be gained. We have right now um, we have statistical significance in each of the 50 states, but we are not there yet with all of the 435 uh, congressional districts. So we need more users just to get a more equal distribution there. And once we have that, we will rank the Congress people 1 to 435 based on how well they represent the people in their districts, just like we have with the senators 1 through 100.
Great. Thank you, Richard. I'm also sharing, we have a shared spreadsheet where we keep the links to everything. And here is Vote Our Voice, so people can find it and use this wonderful tool. So if you want to share any of your information, please go to this shared spreadsheet, and we will be adding resources as we go, so that, the ideas of these Tuesday coffee chats is to connect, empower, and engage. So we try to give tools, bring people together, learn from each other, and really have a great connection. So I really appreciate you joining us, Richard. And then next up, I'm really excited to hear from Alice. Why don't you go, and Denise? I don't know. Please share your stories from long ago and what inspired you to join. Like, our movement is a youth-based movement with the social media, and you were the youth at the front lines at the time. And I'm so honored to have you guys both here on National Voter Registration Day to share this important history with us.
Okay. My name is Alice Moore. Thank you for having us. Uh, to tell you about my story, it's my story, entire story, is a very long story. I'm kind of going to condense it and just tell you how I got started and a little bit what I did and how it affected me and how it's affecting me now. And I have just taken on a new turn. It's like I tell my story not for you to just think about what happened to me, but to encourage, when we talk to the young people, to encourage them to do more because of what happened to me. So I was 16 years old. Well, 15 when I started hearing about SNCC in Selma, Alabama, and that's where we lived. And I was in the 11th grade at the time when I heard about it. And at 16 years old, I decided to, after reading some of the literature that was being handed out by John Lewis and his team, to solicit for students to take on the role of protesting and doing the work for our parents, because naturally we weren't old enough to vote. But I think two things came into mind. Our parents were not able to vote, and they were the breadwinners and everything. And it was dangerous for them, more dangerous for them to try to do what we were doing. So he solicited students, and that's when I joined SNCC along with my sister. And we went to mass meetings to prepare us for the things that might happen. But I have to tell you, every mass meeting I had, nothing prepared me for what happened. So we started on a journey by protesting, just protesting around in the city. And everybody knows about the march and everything, but hardly any people know about what we went through before we got to the march. We were arrested a lot. We were arrested. They let us go home at night. And the main thing happened before the march that affected the younger generation was we got arrested, and a lot of us got taken to a prison camp where we stayed 4 days. And that was traumatic. And we stayed there where nobody knew where we were. No officials knew where we were. And we stayed there until somebody was able to get a scheme together to get out, to go back to the Brown Chapel Church and across the street from the chapel. The project, they're still there. And that's where most of the people, a lot of the people that were protesting lived. So after that incident, one of the girls that lived in the project got out, went back, they took her back, and she told somebody where we told her mother, and then told the other people where we were, and we were bailed out the next day. But fast forward on to the marches. I participated in a lot of marches right in Selma, but the main one that we were prepared for was Bloody Sunday. And I was there for Bloody Sunday, my sister and I marching together. And she was younger, so I was supposed to kind of like stay with her. My mother brought us to the site every day and picked us up every day that we were there. And we started out on Bloody Sunday. We were towards the front of the line because when we got to the top of the bridge, we could see now what was across the bridge, and that was lines of horses and men on horseback with tear gas masks on and billy clubs and whips in their hands. And that's what we saw when we topped the bridge. So we were at the end where we were going over the bridge. And when they ordered, of course, John Lewis and Martin Luther King wasn't there that day, but John Lewis was there along with some of the other, I think Jose William was there. Yeah, he was there, and some others that I can't name right now. I can't think of all the names, but they were there and they were on the front of the line. And when they asked to stop and he didn't, and he went across, and you probably seen the picture a lot where they beat him, and they started on the bridge with the students, and maybe been some grown folks there too. They started the tear gas, they started the whips, they started beating. So I just got tear gas and I ran forward, and we had been instructed that things like this might happen and what to do. And one of the things was say you try to find your way close to water low when you get tear gas. So that's what I did. And I found out later on, I met people that were under the bridge with me that I didn't know then. But we went under the bridge, laid down by the water until we recovered. And when we recovered from the tear gas and was able to realize where we were and how we should get up and get back to the church some kind of way, because that's where everybody was going back. But when I woke up from the tear gas or came to from the tear gas, I was more angry than I have ever been in my life. And I just said at that time, I'm going to do more. That was my first thought, that I'm going to do more. And when it came around to the second march that they planned, and we know Martin Luther King was there, and that was a turnaround march, and we had so many people that came from Selma. I'd never seen that many people in my life that came on that Sunday to start that march. And it was started, we got to the bridge and we knelt and prayed. That was the plan. We knelt and prayed. We came prepared to go, but we knelt and prayed, and then we went back. And then they planned and they worked on a permit to go all the way to Montgomery from Selma walking. So on that day, we were right back there again to start on that. We had our bags packed. We had everything that we thought we needed to go on a 4-day walk. And we started out, and at a point in the highway going to Montgomery, they had to cut the numbers down, and it could be only 300 people. I know some people have read 500, whatever, but only 300 people could walk because it was just a 2-lane highway. And some areas it was 4 lanes, so they could join you there, or they could fall out where the 4-lane ended. And the 2-lane, it was only 300 people. And I kind of say today, I don't know how my sister and I got chosen, because I didn't raise my hand to be one of the 300, but we ended up being 2 of the 300, and we walked all the way. It was an experience. That's where I actually met Martin Luther King at one of the campsites, sitting on a bale of hay, and we had the MPs, the military police, guarding us all the way, lined the highway as we walked each day, guarded the camps each night. But I tell you, as we walked by some of them during the day, we were spat at. They stood at attention, but they would take the opportunity to spit as much as they wanted to, standing at attention. So those were our protectors. And I can't say all of them did that, and I can't make judgment about the ones that knew it was happening. And I don't know if anybody said anything, but I did witness that. But anyway, we finished the march into Montgomery. At St. Jude was the last stop, and they had the quarters for us. And I have just recently seen some of those pictures that I had never seen before, because we didn't have cameras and we didn't take pictures. So we relied on the newspaper, Life magazine, and all of those people. And there were a few people that had phones. And I have just witnessed some of the pictures just this year, where the last places we stopped, like at St. Jude, the last campsite. And it's very touching. But after we got there, and I'm gonna finish telling you, and I'm just picking pieces out that I can relate to you without a lot of time. But when we got there and everything was done, they had a ceremony in Montgomery at the Capitol. And then we sat and waited for a ride to get back to Selma. They used a bus and they used a car. And I know you know of Viola Louisio. She was one of the people in the car along with Jimmy, Jimmy, I think it's Jimmy Jackson. I can't think of his name, but he was riding with her. He was the driver and she was like the escort. They would take a carload, the bus would take a carload, and they just made those trips back. And I was still waiting when I heard about there was a disturbance on the highway, and that's where Viola Louisa got killed on one of the return trips to pick up more children to take them back to Selma. And that's where Jimmy Lee played dead uh, on the road until he was able to deliver the message of what had happened after they had left him there. So after getting on a school bus and coming back to Selma, it was like unbelievable, hard to believe, you know, what we had gone through at that point. But I have to say the proudest moment and the best moment of my life is when my family could go vote. My dad, he always wanted to vote, and I saw him vote before he registered to vote before he died. And everybody in the neighborhood mostly had pickup trucks. So you would see them put chairs on the back of their pickup trucks to drive people to the polls so they could vote, register to vote, because they had been humiliated so many times by counting the jelly beans in the counties and never got registered. So that was like a proud day in August when we watched them go to register vote when the Voter Rights Act was passed. So here I am, alive and well, thank God. And all of that, you know, we talk about it. We never got, it was very traumatic. We never got any mental help, any, you know, you're talking about mental health. We should have it, but we never got any counseling or anything after that. So telling this story really helps a lot. It's like a release of some of the stuff. I didn't talk about it for 50 years. 50 years. And that, and ever since I started, I guess I've been and thanks to my nephew Charles, he got me talking more. I started with a 5-minute speech in my church. And then there were people that in the church that got me to come and tell the story somewhere in Atlanta. And that's how I got started. But it was 50 years before I even talked about it.
Wow. Thank you, Alice. This is so moving. And I'm so glad that you are speaking up and sharing your story. And the whole power of using our voice to share our personal stories is what we're trying to do with the Spark the Vote social media campaign, because nothing moves people like the power of storytelling, speaking from your heart. So I'm so honored to have both of you joining us with these stories. And one of the other issues in our campaign is healthcare. And we talked last week about sensible gun laws and how people in this country are not getting the mental health support that is needed. And here you've been carrying this around, you know, and also beyond the systemic racism, you know, living with that. It's, you know, we're hoping to change by having this conversation about voting and voting for a future we all need, which includes comprehensive health care, mental health care for everybody who needs it. Hopefully we can change things. And I just so appreciate you joining us and sharing the story. And I'm welcoming Denise now to share you side by side what happened. And then after that, I'd love to have Charles, who's heard all of your stories, kind of do some Q&A with you, because I'm sure he knows the best, since he was inspired by your stories. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Denise Holt. I live in Cincinnati. Alice had basically told, you know, what happened to us during this time, but I can tell you what motivated me to want to get out and do what I did because I was sick and tired of being my parents being humiliated because they could not register to vote, where they're being asked to name all 66 counties in Alabama, tell us how many bees are in the jar. And I just got sick and tired of the humiliation for them and was fighting for them. As Alan said, I was 14 at the time. We couldn't vote, but I wanted to make sure, I wanted to do everything possible to make sure our parents were able to vote in their lifetime. And yeah, we were thrown in jail lots of time. And the prison camp was one of the, the worst things that, besides Bloody Sunday, was one of the worst things that happened because they took us to an unknown place was unknown to me. I didn't even know it existed. And an unknown place where nobody in Selma knew where we were, and the place was outside of Selma. So when we got there, we were fingerprinted. And the guy that did my fingerprints, he said, you're too young to be here. And he said, you should go home, because they were allowing people to go home that wanted to go home. And he said, you should go home because this is going to follow you for the rest of your life. And I said, if I go home, that's going to follow me for the rest of my life. So I want to be here and to protest, to make you understand why I'm doing what I'm doing was what our parents did, but, to vote, not only our parents. I mean, of course, our parents were dear and near to our heart, but we wanted all of the seniors in our neighborhood to be able to register to vote. Bloody Sunday was horrific. It seems like I was hit with direct blast of the tear gas. And when I knew anything, or when I came to, there were two guys that had me up, carried me near the riverbank, in order to, until the tear gas settled down. And the ironic, I guess ironic maybe might not be the best word, but the people that were on the horses was our pharmacist, our banker, our grocer, the farmers. They were not law enforcement officers. They were picked. So it seems like every man that did not look like me were on horses that Sunday when we crossed that bridge. It was really, it was bad. And I never mentioned this to anybody. I have a friend, and I've known for over 40 years. And he said, why, he thought on Facebook, he said, why I never heard this? Why you never said anything? And I said, it wasn't something that I wanted to talk about. It wasn't something that I could talk about. I was ready to talk about, and the occasion had not come for me to talk about it until Charles, because we have a Zoom call every week, and somewhere in there it came up, and then he took it and ran with it from there. So that's when I began to talk about it. I am the first vice mayor here in my city, in Forest Park, a suburb of Cincinnati. I have since done some, had conversations, televised conversations here. I would be going to the schools to speak with the students. I do voter registrations. Matter of fact, this Friday is homecoming for our school. I'm going to be doing voter registrations there. I am the president of my party here in the city. And I'm just out pushing, walking, and doing all of those things to make sure people get out and register to vote. Not only register to vote, but when the polls are open, go to the polls. So I tell people all the time, don't let what we did go in vain. There are people that lost their lives so you can have the privilege to vote. It is the opportunity to vote. My parents, we have to fight like hell in order for them to get to vote. And as I said, people lost lives in order for you to vote. So please, please, don't let all the suffering and the deaths and the bloodshed go in vain because you don't feel the need to go to the poll to vote. Oh, my vote doesn't count. Every vote counts. If your vote did not count, there will not be people out here fighting so hard to keep you from voting. So that should tell you something. Your vote must count because too many people are trying to stop your vote. They're trying to suppress your vote. So that alone should tell you that your vote does count. So with that, I'm just, pushing it. Going to be at the polls on election day and still do the work that I started out doing when I was 14 years old, 64 years ago? 60 years ago, because I'm 74. So to continue that work that I started when I was 14 years old. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Denise. This is such an honor. You're both sheroes. I mean, seriously, what you've been through and being on the forefront of this and being in that 300 and, surviving, so I would now like to welcome Charles, who's your nephew and has When You Vote, I Win, and how he started this work. And, I love what you've been doing and then how you found out that their history.
Thank you, Holly, and thank you all for being here today. Thank you to my aunts for sharing their story. I want to shout out to my team members, several of which are on the screen. I see James Brown, Joanne, Mickey, Miss Powell, Loretta. But let me start by saying every time I hear their story, it's like something else in it pulls at me. And today it was when my Aunt Alice talked about 4 days. And I can't imagine, especially in the environment of everything that was going on, not knowing where my kids were for 4 days. I mean, folks had already lost their lives. The Jimmy Lee Jacksons and the Medgar Evers and the Goodwin, Cheney and Schwartz, they'd already lost their lives, right? And now your kids are missing. You don't know where they are. And it's been 4 days. I can't even imagine what that must have been like for my grandparents and for all the other parents who had children who were actually out of their custody and care intentionally, right? Because they took them there with intent and with a purpose. And then for them to not know where they were for 4 days. But when it comes to the organization, it is, as my Aunt Alice and Denise have both stated, it started, there were some things that came together. In Michigan, we now have automatic voter registration when you engage with the Secretary of State, or for some folks, it might be, what is it, wherever you get your driver's license.
Motor voter.
Right,
Yeah,
wherever you go.
yeah.
And so when that happened, it made it so that voter registration drives and campaigns and things of that nature were no longer a thing of great necessity in Michigan. Michigan is now reporting out from the Secretary of State's office that we have over 95% of people who are eligible to vote are registered. So our conversation shifted into mobilization. How do we get the folks who are registered to vote to come out and vote? Because the numbers are far from what they need to be, especially in the marginalized communities in the state of Michigan. For those of you that are familiar with Michigan, I always talk about these numbers. And just going back to the last primary in Detroit, which is by far the largest city in the state of Michigan, there was a 16% turnout for the primary. In Pontiac, another marginalized community, it was 12%. In Flint, most everybody knows Flint because of the water crisis, but only 12% turned out to vote in the primary. And then in the city that I live in, which is the second largest community of color, Southfield, Michigan, we only turned out at 27%. And so with that, it's like 560,000 citizens who are already registered didn't turn out to vote in the primary. But it was that conversation with the automatic registration piece and the realization that we needed to get into mobilization. At that very same time, I'm on these Zoom calls, these family Zoom calls, and my Aunt Alice and Denise, they start talking about this, and I'm thinking, what are they talking about? Because they didn't talk about it. And they were arguing about the bacon, right? I mean, and I know bacon is a subject, in our politics today. And I'm just staying nonpartisan for sure, because I'm in a 501c3 as well. But they were arguing about, who had the best bacon, and you must have had different bacon, and you were in a different place. And I'm like, as Holly has said, people need to hear these stories. They do. These stories are getting away from us. And we need to get these stories out, get them in front of people who need to be motivated with the understanding of the history that's attached to voting. And so we do things like, we have two major functions in our organization called When You Vote, I Win. And I'll tell you a little bit why we named it like that. But our two major programs that we do, one is called Value of the Vote. And in the Value of the Vote programs, we go into high schools and houses of worship and clubs, wherever they open the doors, and we take video cut downs of the stops that my aunts have made in these sessions, and we put them before people. And especially with the students, we have an expansive program that goes on for about an hour and a half. But we take them all the way through the history. We start in the Selma 65 experience with my aunt's video edits, take them all the way back to the Constitutional Convention, and then bring them all the way up to what is currently going on when it comes to voter suppression. And it is really a shame. It is America's shame that not only we have that in our history, but we're still fighting those same battles today. That is an absolute, there is nothing that can be said, to my mind, that is good about the state of America where we're still fighting for voting rights. To me, that's insane. But we do those, and then we also have what we call an afternoon with two Selma foot soldiers. That's where I drag my aunts, all over the United States, wherever they'll accept us, wherever they're willing to come in and allow us to tell our story. Them tell their story. I don't have a story. My story is their story. And we put them in front of audiences, and we try to make it as much as possible young people. And so they've been to Michigan several times, and they're coming back this month. We've been to Kentucky, and I was in a conversation today about going to Kansas City, which looks like that's going to happen. And with Kansas City, I mean, we're in this conversation, and they said, we want you to come before October 9th. And I'm thinking, what's so special about October 9th? And I go and look at their laws when it comes to voting. If you are not registered to vote by October 9th in Missouri, you can't vote. You cannot vote. And I thought, that's insane to me. That's insane. So we get into these engagements with my aunt. We call it When You Vote, I Win, because we are much aligned with what Holly does with her organization, because we believe in the power of storytelling as well. And we tell people, when you engage with people, what we want you to do is not make it hard. Tell them your story. Why do I vote is similar to When You Vote, I Win, in as much as when we tell folks to engage with folks, engage with them about your story. Tell them about what's going on in your life, and be very strategic when you have that conversation. You can talk to them. Like my conversation includes things like holding on to the ACA because my daughter is on the ACA. And so what we do is when we have that conversation with individuals, what we train people to do is really a transfer of power. The power dynamic is shifted to the hearer. We make it so that the hearer understands that they have the power to determine what goes on in our lives. We surrender that power over to them because in reality, they're the ones that have it. If certain communities don't turn out to vote, then the things that I need to keep, I'm very much subject to lose. And so we tell people, don't feel shy about making voting about you. I'm about to lose this. I need to gain this. And the reality is the conversation is more about what we're about to lose than what we're really trying to gain. That's the position that we're in right now. And so that's why we named the organization When You Vote, I Win. That's a little bit of history about the organization. And I'm not sure what else you want me to do from there, Holly, but
That's perfect. And I love, I wasn't sure I was gonna do this today, but I think what you're saying and how we want to share personal stories to encourage other voters. I am going to briefly share our 1 minute reel about what we're trying to do with our Why Do You Vote and Spark the Vote social media challenge, because we've actually extended our deadline for the challenge till October 6th. As you mentioned, cutoff is October 9th in one state. The first state is October 6th this year. So we've extended our deadline until October 6th. So anybody could still register to vote and spark the vote. So let me share my screen real quick. And so, we have this Spark the Vote social media and film challenge where, like, Alice, Denise, I'd love for you to make a short video on and get it on social media, share your stories. It's so powerful hearing about the 4 days. I mean, the horses, you guys down by the water after tear gas. People need to hear this. So we actually have $50,000 in prize money for best videos. So please join our challenge. And here's a 1 minute reel that shows.
I vote for women's choice because we need autonomy over our own bodies. Why do you vote?
I vote because democracy is an important part of the American spirit. Why do you vote?
I vote because the people who came before me made so many sacrifices to make my vote count. And that's why I vote. Why do you vote?
I vote because I want kids to be safe at school. Why do you vote?
I vote because of marriage equality. Why do you vote?
For our environment, to hear our planet, to hear your rights, to hear for everything. So that's the reason I vote. Why do you vote?
I vote because I believe in universal health care for all. Why do you vote?
I vote because I care about marriage equality and people exercising their rights. Why do you vote?
I vote because action is the antidote to despair. Why do you vote?
VOTE.
It's for social media, so we want it to be, fun as well. And before we get, Greg Palast has joined us, and I wanted to share 2 minutes from his film.
State Republican Party, so I'm pretty involved in that, which I think is the right. Let's see, that would be the right way to be, and also I'm on the right.
Apparently, you had filed some challenges to 4,000 voters.
Yes.
No ballot. No ballot in the mail, called to register, and the announcement there was, Mr. Turner, you have been challenged.
Major Gamaliel Turner is the military's expert on warfare of the future.
I project weapons and capabilities out to the future. For me, it's all about the survival of the soldier.
Assigned to Port Hueneme in California.
So you're telling me 2,600 miles away, 2 days or 3 days before an election, that if I want to vote, all I have to do is show up and prove as an American citizen that I have the right to vote. again, you talk to fools like that. You talk to fools like that. I'm not a fool. You can't compel somebody to say, oh, you can vote. I'm trying to vote now. How are you going to put these other things like, it's no more than a poll tax. It's no more than how many pieces of bubble gum are in this jar. It's the same thing over and over, just modernized and reviewed.
So it's an old Jim Crow tax.
It's the same thing. But I know what it looks like because I was there.
Indeed, he was there. Major Turner comes from an illustrious civil rights family. His father, Reverend Harold Turner, founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference alongside Reverends Ralph Abernathy and Martin Luther King.
A lot of the meetings, private meetings, coordinating meetings were done at our house. Martin was there, Reverend Abernathy was there.
They were just like friends and family and people coming in. We're sitting here at this table, but I'm gonna tell you, this table had papers on it. This was a working table.
Speaking from the pulpit, I had an opportunity to change some lives. Did I take that opportunity wisely? I think I did.
Oh, looks like you did.
You baptized me.
Wow. So
They mean.
It's our name.
The modern civil rights movement that was born right here at this dining room table would lead to the passage of the Voting Rights Act and change America's heart and soul. A revolution planned right here because the Turner House was strategically located between the King and Abernathy homes. So the leadership could cross through a series of backyards and not be seen for their safety.
I could see, Alice, you were reacting to what you're seeing. And before we invite Greg to speak, Alice and Denise, watching that after all that you've been sharing, I don't know, do you have a few words?
It brings back memories, bring back memories, and I don't necessarily like, it's bad.
And it's emotional to me because Charles can tell you I can't make it through one of these videos he's doing without shedding tears, because this is how we, what he's saying is what we felt. We haven't had the opportunity and not talking about it for so long. It was a lot built up. And when I'm telling it and remembering it at the same time, it's very, very emotional. And what that gentleman is doing, telling his story, that's the same reaction you get when you hear from Denise and I tell a story, or what we have to tell, or what we did. It's the same reaction because we all felt the same pain. It was the same pain. And unfortunately, we didn't talk about it sooner, that maybe I could get through something without crying, but maybe not, maybe not. Because when you think about it, a lot of things kind of fade away, but some of those things are embedded and won't go anywhere. It just stays there.
I mean, I just saw Greg's film in the theater and I was crying because it just changes form. I had walked through the African American History Museum and you just see how it changes the face, and we're still facing the same things. But with that, this film is online for free now. Greg Palast is here to join us, and he does an amazing job in this film of going through the history. We can't sit here and watch the whole film this morning, but I encourage all of you to watch it. So Greg, thank you
Yes.
so much for joining us.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Holly. And thank you, Denise, for your personal reaction, which is what we're getting all over. Okay, so let me give you some of the story. The film is called Vigilantes, Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. And so let me give you a little more of what's going on. Now, that was a pretty heavy-duty part of it, but it's also, as Holly can tell you, it's a very entertaining film. I was trying not to do, one of these PBS good for you stories with a white guy in front of a bookcase. Though right now, I guess I'm a white guy in front of a bookcase. And Vigilantes, Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. As you heard, it's narrated by the wonderful Rosario Dawson, and it's produced by Martin Sheen, my favorite president, President Bartlett, who's, by the way, going to be on the air with me today, and he's meeting with Joe Biden, who has been talking about the film, by the way, President Biden and Kamala Harris. And Vigilantes, Inc., this is a whole new thing. You saw that guy with the cowboy hat. This guy dresses like he actually dresses up as Doc Holliday, the vigilante. He personally challenged 4,000 voters in his county, almost all of them, like Major Turner, whom you saw, soldiers from Fort Benning who were assigned to other military bases because of the Ukraine war, and some were sent overseas. You know what? Guess what, Holly? Guess what, gang? You don't lose your vote if you're a soldier sent to another base. You get an absentee ballot. And they denied 4,000 black soldiers an absentee ballot because they were challenged by Doc Holliday here. And when you see the whole film, you see he came in wearing a holstered real 6-gun, with the pearl handle, and he made a big point that it was loaded. He challenged 4,000 black men, soldiers. They all lost their vote, except for Major Turner, by the way. He did fly 5,000 miles round trip ultimately. He brought in, because he's from the founding family of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference with Martin Luther King, he brought in Mark Elias, who's just been hired, by the way, by Kamala Harris now to be her vote suppression expert. So he had to bring in a Washington lawyer, fly 5,000 miles round trip. He got his vote counted ultimately weeks after the election. He got his vote counted, and the other 4,000 soldiers, they were cut out. They didn't get their ballots. And how does this happen? Who is this guy? You might think he's a goofball. Well, he also happens to be the chairman of the Republican Party in Southern Georgia. And he is one of 88 vigilantes who challenged, are you ready for this? 180,000 voters in 2020. And we ran this fight to block these vigilantes, but now they've changed the law so you can't turn down the vigilante challenges. About 12,000 people were blocked from voting of the 180,000. If they were able to just double that to 24,000 voters, Biden would have lost the state of Georgia. What is this all about? According to Mark Elias, Kamala Harris's new vote suppression person, this is the number one threat to the 2024 election. It's called vigilante challenges. You as an individual, 43 states have laws that allow you. I can say Holly Mosher should not be allowed to vote here because she doesn't actually live. I don't know where you live, Holly, but let's say, or Holly can say Greg Palast shouldn't vote. I live and register in Los Angeles because he doesn't really live in Los Angeles. They're not providing any evidence, nothing. That one guy, again, 4,000. You think that that's something? You'll see in the film me confront a woman who's was running for vice chair of the Republican Party in Georgia. She personally challenged 32,000 voters. One person. And the reason why the film is called Vigilantes, Inc. is that in this game of mass voter challenges was created by the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan, in 1946. They went on a campaign to challenge every black voter in Georgia and to cover their tracks because it's illegal. It was at the time. It's not illegal now. It was illegal at the time to target all black voters. And the FBI came in, but they actually elected a Klansman as governor, Eugene Talmadge, as governor. And they're about to arrest, you'll see in the film, they're about to arrest Talmadge in 46. But he had a collision with a bottle of bourbon and died just before the indictment came down. But so I go to this woman's house in the red dress who challenged 32,000 people. And she's got an loaded automatic weapons next to the door, ammo stacked to the ceiling. By the way, very wealthy, very elegant. And and I showed her pictures of some of her black neighbors. I said, "Do you recognize this woman?" "Oh, no, I don't know who she is." "Ever speak to this woman?" "Oh, no, I don't know who she is." "Ever go to her house? You know where she lives?" "No, I don't." I said, "But you challenged her vote. You don't know who this woman is. You've never met her. You challenged her vote." And she said, "Well, I can't call 32,000 people." And I said, "Yeah, but you challenged 32,000 people's right to vote." That was in Cobb County, Georgia. And because Cobb County Board of Elections people had seen my work and read I did technical reports for the ACLU. We work with Black Voters Matter, Latasha Brown. She's a star of the film. NAACP's leader, Gerald Griggs. So I go in and I show her neighbors, pictures of her neighbor. "I can't call these people. I don't know who they are, but you challenged their vote." And then I said, I started asking her about, do you realize you could be violating the felony crime under the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871? She says, "Oh, I don't know about that. I'm Canadian." She said, "I'm Canadian. I don't know about any of these things. I can't make this up." Then she throws me out. And of course, my local camera crew, because of the guns, she starts screaming at me and throwing me out. Her husband actually jumped on top of me during the interview. And my local camera crew literally ran for their lives. And then she throws me out of the house and uses language I couldn't keep in the film. She called me an asshole, and then it got worse from there. And I didn't want to lose my rating on my documentary. So and then that guy with the 6 guns.
Yeah.
He actually showed up at Major Turner's. We got him into Major Turner's house, the house that he said that the major didn't live in. And he challenged the major's vote because he says he didn't live in this house. I said, "You ever been in this house?" "No." "Did you ever speak to Major Turner? One of the soldiers that you challenged, his vote you challenged?" "No." Do you know where he lives?" "No." I said, "Well, he lives right here. Here he is." And he came out of the kitchen, and I had the major and the vigilante who blocked his vote. They confronted each other. It's both weird, funny, and heartbreaking at the same time. And then we go through the history of vote suppression. By the way, it's not just Georgia. Then we go to Texas, we go to Arizona, where I go undercover to Kerry Lake rally. You'll see me in a red, white, and blue hat instead of my usual fedora. And they were honoring the QAnon shaman. He had just gotten out of prison for the felony crime of, breaking and entering into Nancy Pelosi's office. He wasn't wearing his horns anymore. They got clipped. They were taken by the FBI. So you'll see in this film also the history of enslavement, which you'll find in the film. Did you know that the current governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, it was his family. They used to be called the Habershams. It was his family that first brought Black people from Africa in chains to Georgia, because, believe it or not, the Georgia territory, which is most of the Deep South before the Revolution, before it was divided into states, the Georgia territory outlawed slavery. It was one of the only parts of the United States where slavery was outlawed, Georgia. But King George III, whom we got rid of, King George gave Brian Kemp's family a special dispensation to bring in enslaved Africans. And that's the source of his current millions. And he won't admit it, but we give the facts. And that's important. You cannot divide history from vote suppression. And that's one of our main themes. And we can, the fight to stop these vigilante attacks is related to the anti-CRT, anti-history hysteria, teaching of making history a crime, teaching history a crime in Florida, in Georgia, and Trump signed an executive order banning the teaching of what they call critical race theory, but it actually says you can't teach divisive historical concepts or anything that makes anyone of any race uncomfortable in the classroom. So if you're a white person and you're told that that people were enslaved, well, that teacher could get fired in those states. But the important thing to know about these vigilante attacks is that they took it out for test drive in Georgia in 2020 and almost flipped the state for Trump. It didn't work. So they tightened the laws and they tightened their procedures. And the group that came up with these lists, True the Vote, which, you know, they're the authors of that film, 2000 Mules. Anyway, the group True the Vote, which fielded 88 vote challengers in Georgia in 2020, has now signed up, are you ready for this? 40,000 vigilante vote challengers. And as of August 4, they'd already challenged 852,000 voters. 852,000 voters.
Wow, thanks, Greg. This is so important. I'm going to share now. IJ from Black Voters Matter couldn't make the call, but they're having, today is National Voter Registration Day. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation today to start the day. Well, it's on the East Coast, it's afternoon. But please help register people to vote. Here is texting Tuesdays is what Black Voters Matter is doing, and they're very easy, and you can reach thousands of people in an hour. I've done it myself. It's really easy to sign up. And I hope that everybody joins one of these texting Tuesdays, because we need people to register. We need to make sure they're registered. If you check your registration and you're registered, take a photo of it so that you can prove that you are registered. So if anything happens, and I know we always like to connect and have questions. I know we're getting to the top of the hour, but if people, are willing to stay on a little bit longer and have a few questions, I would, love to have a little bit more. We're so lucky to have Alice and Denise here. We're lucky to have Greg here. We're lucky to have Charles here. Does anybody have questions or thoughts or things to share? Michelle, yes.
Hi, thanks so much. And thanks to all of you for being here in this tremendous discussion. Greg, I wanted to ask you, you say that President Biden is now aware of this. Is this translating into action? Obviously, Mark Elias is on the case, which is great news, but what can be done? Because, you've just listed well over 1 million voters in swing states who've been challenged. What's going to happen?
Well, I don't expect a damn thing to happen from the Biden administration. Are you kidding? He's been in for 4 years. He hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
And he basically buried the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Now, the response when they were, it was Jesse Jackson who told them about the film. He's one of our major promoter of the film, The Vigilante Attacks, and speaking to his daughter and Santita Jackson, who is a sorority sister with Kamala,
right.
and she said, well, I'm in, I'll push the John Lewis Act. Well, you ain't going to get in unless you deal with it right now. But I will give her credit. There's one single Democratic Party establishment person who's been screaming about the vigilante attacks. Besides, there's me and him, and Mark Elias, and she just hired him. So I'm hoping I'm hoping that Mark Elias will join us. I am not, I'm a journalist. I'm nonpartisan. My foundation is nonpartisan. So I cannot coordinate with them, but they can promote our stuff. They can take this information and unleash Mark Elias to fight this stuff. That's what I hope that they would do. I don't expect a damn thing out of the Justice Department. They haven't done anything. They never will do anything. And at least Biden was a little bit better than Obama. Obama was actually hostile to discussion of vote suppression. And that's just the truth. So don't expect the Democratic Party or public officials to protect you. You protect you.
Yes.
I'm working with, like I say, we are partnered with Rainbow Push and the Reverend Jackson. We're going to be holding, in fact, Jesse Jackson III is sponsoring our showings in Atlanta with the NAACP, Black Voters Matter Fund, and several other the major voting rights organizations. And so this, we have to do it. We have to prepare people. That's why I want you to go to gregpalast.com and get the free download link and spread it all over. Because if people know it's happening, they'll be aware, they'll start checking. We also have a site, saveyourvote.org, which just went live, where you can get the film, but you can also get information to check your registration, steps you can take, the 866 Our Vote. So you take that into the polling station with you. If you have a problem, you got a lawyer. Advice on how to vote, which is in person, early. Don't mail it in. Don't go postal. If you have to mail it in, and I'm in a state like California, I mail in my ballot because I have no choice. I'm traveling around on election day as a reporter. But if you, about at least 1 in 7 mail-in ballots never get counted. They get disqualified for all kinds of picayune reasons, from postage due to you added your middle initial in signing the ballot and you didn't register that way. So I wouldn't mail in my ballot if I didn't have to.
I need to stop you there. Are you kidding me? Only one?
Well, it depends who's counting. MIT says about 25% of mail-in ballots don't get counted. I looked at I'm going by the official, let me say this, the official report of the federal government from the Elections Assistance Commission. And by the way, the chance your ballot will not be counted if you mail it in, or will be disqualified for another reason, is 700% higher if you're black than if you're white, 500% higher if you're Hispanic than if you're white. So if it was just random, it wouldn't matter. It's not random. If you're Asian American, you're in trouble. You get shunted, you show up, there's a vigilante attack, you've been challenged. And they say, oh, don't worry, just fill out this provisional ballot. According to I just looked it up yesterday, according to the United States Elections Assistance Commission, which keeps tally, they said in the last election, are you ready? 2.7 million provisional ballots were rejected. 2.7 million voters lost their vote, and very few probably even know that happened. They filled out that provisional ballot form. 10 million people filled out provisional ballot forms. 2.3 million votes were rejected. And not one of those voters, not one was arrested or charged with trying to vote illegally, which is a federal crime. And yet they took away their ballots. By the way, given the racial division of whose ballots get spoiled in 2016, that was Hillary Clinton's margin. That would have wiped out Trump across the nation if all those provisional ballots had been counted.
I want to take it to our next questions, because I know we're already over time, but I appreciate everybody staying on. This is such an important call on.
Thank you, Greg. That was horrifying. Thank you for that.
So Terry, and
we
then
can overcome it.
Yeah, Terry, and then Mickey. Yeah.
Terry, thank you for the question.
Hi. Basically, I just wanted to say I'm 79 years old, and Alice and Denise's stories broke my heart, because this was going on and I had no idea. I mean, I was very naive. So I want you to know that I think, and I've been doing some work now for months, newly working on all this stuff. I think your 2 stories are perhaps, and then combined with the film, the single most important piece of work that I have come across. And I'm going to do what I can through Marcus for Democracy and Heather Cox Richardson and whoever else I can to continue to broaden who hears this, because I'm sure I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be able to eat lunch. I'm physically reacting to the horror of this. And the fact, that phrase that you used about this is modern Jim Crow and modern KKK, we have to know this. So anyway, thank you. And I will do what I can.
Thank you, Terry, for sharing. Yes,
I appreciate you sharing that. I just want to interject and here. I'm in Georgia. I worked the polls so many years. I saw so many things. Right now, today, I check my vote. I go and check whether my voting status is still good, probably every other month. Even though I voted in the last election or whatever, I'm in Georgia and I worked in Georgia, and it was a different, if you know anything about Georgia, I worked in Sandy Springs, versus working in Southwest Atlanta. And that's where I am. And that was my last job in Southwest Atlanta. But in Sandy Spring, it was a different story in that area. But I checked my voting status myself, and I know I'm registered. And I check it and encourage people to just go on and check it because I know about those provisional ballots. I know all about those things, and I just tell them to check once, check twice, and keep checking to make sure that they're before the day come, get it right before the day gets here. Yeah.
Yes, I should mention we just launched a site saveyourvote.org where you can get the movie, but you can also check your registration status. One really probably the most heartbreaking scene in the film is, and it's a lot of it is very funny, as Holly can tell you, but a heartbreaking part of the film is when I'm at a polling station in Atlanta, a 92-year-old woman shows up in a walker with her granddaughter. And she's told, you can't vote here. Your registration has been eliminated, purged. This woman had been voting at this, Black woman had been voting at this station for 50 years, since her cousin was assassinated. This is the cousin of Martin Luther King. And she was told, you can't vote here. And her granddaughter was just hysterical. How could this happen? How could this happen that they just removed her registration? And that's why we ask people to check your registration. You go to saveyourvote.org, and we have a link to the vote.gov site. I checked my registration yesterday, by the way. Please now check your registration, which you can do at vote.gov, G-O-V. But I want you to take the link to my film. You know, Martin Sheen, the George DiCaprio is another producer, and of course, with tremendous support from his son, Leonardo, we are able to offer the film for free to anyone. I mean, we're a foundation, so we don't mind some donations if you got the cash. But the important thing is to get out the link for people to see the film. And I want to thank Holly and the other activist organizations. We've had over 200,000 views of the trailer to the film in the last 3 days. So it is going viral, but I want you to make it more viral, because if we don't warn people, it's so confusing to people. They never heard of such a thing. How can I be challenged by someone who's not the government, just some schmuck with a 6-gun? And by the way, all 88 vote challengers in Georgia, I don't know about the 40,000, but the 88 vote challengers in Georgia, every single one was a Republican official. Every one. I'm not being partisan. That's just the truth. The Democrats, I cannot find, despite over 1 million challenge. Well, if it was 852,000 challenge over a month ago, you can imagine what it is now. And, and it's highly partisan. It's highly racial. The voters being attacked are almost exclusively Black, Asian American, Hispanic, and young. In other words, voters of color, and the color is blue. This is the only way that Trump can win this election. And that's what Mark Elias is trying to get across as well. And Black voters matter. The film has Latasha Brown, the co-founder of Black Voters Matter. The film has Gerald Griggs, the great lawyer who put R. Kelly in prison. And he's now the president of the Georgia NAACP. And these are and we have many other activists on the ground that we work with. So it's not just a movie, it's a movement. It's a weapon for the movement for real voter protection. So please spread out the word, because it gives people a warning. And so you check your check their registration. Thank you.
We will do that. And likewise, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan effort here with Money Out Voters In and Why Do You Vote? And I know it's just the facts of who is contesting this that we're sharing. And Mickey, you have had your hand up.
Thank you for the opportunity. Alice and Denise, it's so good to see you. I've heard you so many times, and every time I hear something new. I learn something every time. But Greg, what you're describing is an absolute horror. And Mark Elias is fighting, and we have people fighting here in Michigan. But here in Michigan, we have something called an impermissible challenge. That in order to challenge a vote or a voter, you need evidence in hand for the challenge to move forward. Looking for any ray of hope, are any of the states that are being so targeted, do they have such a law where there's an impermissible challenge in the absence of evidence, or is that being steamrollered even if they do have the law? Thank you.
Okay. Interestingly, only one state actually fines you for wrongful challenges, and that's Florida, interestingly enough. And it's just one state out of 50 will actually fine you for impermissible challenges. However, that has not stopped Cleta Mitchell, who is Donald Trump's lawyer, who was on that call when he feloniously told the Secretary of State, give me 12,000 votes. Find me 12,000 votes. Cleta Mitchell's challenged 10,000 people in Florida. I don't know if anyone's going to who's going to bring the hammer down on her. The Ron DeSantis government? I don't think so. So even where you have the one state which fines you for impermissible challenges, nothing's happening to Cleta Mitchell, who ought to be in prison. She was also an organizer of the January 6th riot, by the way, and she was hauled before Congress for that. But so it's really quite terrible. And when you say, and yeah, here's the problem. If you say impermissible, I don't know the strength of the Michigan law. It's better in Michigan, but in other states, you mount a challenge. And what they're doing now, see, when the Klan did it in 46, they had to write down the name of each voter that they were challenging. These people are taking this law and simply sending in emails to their county clerks saying, here's 5,000 people, here's 6,000 people, here's 30,000 people. And they are flooding the county voting offices with these things. And in most states, if you're challenged, you have to physically go into the office and have a mini trial to prove that you are who you are, that you're an American citizen, that you live where you live. This is a new Jim Crow obstacle course. There's no other way to describe it. It's the new Jim Crow tactic. And yeah.
Oh, well, what I was trying to reach, and again, what you're describing is horrific. Yeah. But here in Michigan, and I've been witness to it, someone tried to challenge a ballot, and okay, what evidence do you have? And they had no evidence. We just want to challenge it. I think whatever the reason was that the person doesn't live there or whatever, it was impermissible. It wasn't even accepted. So a fine wouldn't matter because the challenge was dismissed. And so that was my question. But it sounds like Michigan is a leader on a lot of things. It may be on this one as well.
Well, the problem we have are when you have Republican legislatures or you have trifectas like in several states like Georgia. These people are they're signing affidavits saying we believe that these people do not live at their voting address. And again, that was 180,000 challenges. This time, the NAACP expects 300,000 to 400,000 challenges, and under the new laws, and this is true in many states, you can't challenge the challenge. You have to make people go through that process. So no longer in 2020, the only reason Biden won the state is we ran this big campaign, and almost all the Republican county clerks refused to take these challenges. And I was working at the ACLU too, and but this time they can't do that. They can't stop. They can't say this person has no evidence. They sent us 10,000 names. They have no evidence. They can't turn that down now. And we go to Texas, And it's just horrific. Arizona, Nevada, there's something called the Pigpen Project, which has already challenged 10,000 people. In just Philadelphia alone, we just had 10,000 challenges. It's all over these swing states, especially Nevada, Arizona. So this is a real serious danger. Wisconsin, we were able to stop the purge in 2020. I did a report for Black Voters Matter Fund and the ACLU, and the believe it or not, the nonpartisan state elections board there rejected 130,000 challenges. And so, but I don't know what's going to happen this time, because they've spread it, because it's so huge this time. It's playing whack-a-mole. So you have to warn people, and one of the ways to warn them, go to gregpalast.com, download the film, watch the trailer, download the film, or not download it, stream it, and get the word out. Because if people see these stories of the people who've been challenged, if they see the crazy challengers, they'll understand how serious this is, and they'll understand what they can do to challenge the challengers.
Right. Thank you, Greg. This is so important. I'm so glad your movie is out now and for free. And I'd actually love to invite anybody who has been challenged to tell their story on social media so that we can, get
I hope
more awareness.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I hope that you have a talk with Major Turner.
Yeah.
Because he can really, he's the guy who can explain. He's very passionate.
Yeah.
And his family's very passionate about this. And you get the story from someone who really not only has been attacked, but understands the entire historical process behind it. So thank you very much for giving me this extra time and for being with this wonderful group. I want to thank you, and I'll see you at gregpalast.com.
Yes. And
get the movies. And
Greg and Alice and Denise, that's such an honor again, like I said, to hear your stories and share them. I'm sorry it took 50 years to have the courage to speak up, but please keep using your voices. And, we have this on video. I know Charles is trying to make a movie on your lives, Greg and Charles. Maybe you guys could talk after. Hearing their stories up front, recalling that day is very powerful, and we will continue. We can all do what we can do. Join the Tuesday texting with Black Voters Matter. I've shared the link, and thank you so much for your time. It's been such an honor.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.